All right, let's just jump right into it. Imagine this for a second. In one single decisive moment, the entire top leadership of a major nation is just gone, wiped off the map. That's the exact scenario we're going to break down today. A hypothetical strike on Iran that created this huge power vacuum. And, the consequences, well, they're anything but simple.
And this quote right here, it just nails it. A perilously simple fix to a very complex problem. I mean, it sounds so clean, right? A surgical strike, a straightforward solution. But the thing is, as we're about to see, when you blast open a power vacuum like that, you have absolutely no guarantee you're going to like what rushes in to fill it.
So how did this all go down? Well, it was fast. I mean, incredibly fast. In just a matter of hours, a targeted attack takes out the entire top tier of the Iranian regime. And just like that, boom, the political landscape of the whole region is changed forever.
And look, the sheer scale of this decapitation is, well, it's just staggering. I mean, we're not talking about just one or two people. We are talking about the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei himself. Gone. The defense minister, Aziz Nasirzadeh, gone. The head of the Security Council, Ali Shamkhani, and the IRGC commander, Mohammad Pakpour. You see, this isn't just cutting the head off the snake, it's like ripping out its spine, too.
Okay, so the leadership is gone. What happens next? What happens on the streets of Tehran? Well, what you get is pure chaos, total contradiction. This strike didn't unify the nation against a common enemy. Nope. It just ripped the lid off and exposed just how deeply fractured Iran already was.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On one hand, you've got jubilant celebrations. I mean, people are literally dancing in the streets, ecstatic the Khamenei's rule is over. But then, at the very same time, the state declares 40 days of mourning, and you see these huge, massive pro-regime crowds pouring out. It's two completely opposite realities happening side by side in the very same city. It's wild.
So with the old guard wiped out, what happens? A desperate, chaotic scramble for control. A power grab. And make no mistake, this isn't about rebuilding the country. For the factions left behind, it's about pure survival. And that is where things get really unpredictable. And really, really dangerous.
So, who steps in? I mean, that's the question on everyone's mind, right? With a power vacuum this massive, who could possibly have the power, the legitimacy, and frankly, the sheer will to take control of whatever's left?
And to even begin to answer that, you have to understand what the Iranian regime had become over the last, almost 50 years. It started as a theocracy, sure, but it morphed into an autocracy and, crucially, a kleptocracy. Now what's that? It basically means a government run by thieves. Power wasn't just about ideology anymore, it was about cold, hard cash. The IRGC, for example, controlled huge chunks of the economy. We're talking construction, telecom, energy. This created a system where literally millions of people's livelihoods depended on the regime staying in power. That makes any kind of change incredibly complicated.
So you might be thinking, why can't a new, stable government just step in and take over? Well, it's not that simple. For starters, there's no government in a box just waiting in the wings. Years and years of systematic repression have basically wiped out any real organized opposition. And no, the Shah's son can't just fly in and reclaim the throne. So the hard truth, the crucial point here, is that any new leader is probably going to have to come from within the fractured, competing pieces of the old regime. That's a scary thought.
And here's something really important to keep in mind, especially if you're thinking about other conflicts like, say, Syria. When Assad's regime was on the ropes, his military was already hollowed out from years of civil war. But Iran's security forces, totally different story. They're strong, they're intact, and they literally just had a refresher course in the power of savagery by crushing that recent uprising. This is not a force that's just going to pack up and go home. Right, so this internal chaos, it's not going to stay internal for long. In fact, it can't. The shockwaves from this power vacuum are already spilling over Iran's waters, and it's putting the entire region on a razor's edge.
And this right here is the absolute nightmare scenario. What happens if no single faction can actually win that power struggle? The risk is that Iran itself fractures. It shatters into a patchwork of warring territories. I mean, can you imagine the collapse of a nation of 90 million people? It would create a black hole of instability so massive it could swallow the entire Middle East.
And things are already escalating. It looks like one of Khamenei's last acts was to order retaliation. And guess what? Those orders were carried out after he was dead. Missiles and drones slammed into neighboring countries. And here's the kicker. These were the very same countries that have been telling the U.S. to hold back, to show restraint. So now
Now they're enraged, and Iran is more isolated and dangerous than ever. So this brings us to the outsiders, the US and Israel. What was their game plan here? Well, they were clearly betting on a cleaner outcome. The idea was, you take out the top layer of leadership, and that leaves everyone in a much better, safer place. But that gamble is now running headfirst into a very, very messy reality. And you know, history has some pretty sobering lessons about this kind of thing. It's one thing to win a quick military victory. It's a whole other ballgame to actually control what happens next politically. And as this quote says, you can look back through history and you'll find very, very few examples where an air campaign like this actually leads to a replacement government that the attackers wanted. It just doesn't work out that way very often.
It seems like the U.S. reached for what some are calling the Venezuela playbook, this idea that you can just sort of anoint a successor and things will fall into place. But here's the problem. Iran is not Venezuela, not even close. The regime is way more entrenched, the security forces are far more loyal, and the whole political scene is just infinitely more complex. It's a totally different animal.
And this chart just lays out the massive disconnect between the goals and the reality. So, what was the goal? Hit their nuclear and missile programs, maybe encourage some kind of regime change. Okay, and the reality? A power vacuum that's getting filled by even harder hardliners, a real risk of the entire state collapsing, and, maybe most importantly, zero control over what comes next.
But from a purely political standpoint, the US president has a pretty clean exit strategy. See, because the stated mission was just about hitting military targets, he can step up to a podium at any time, declare mission accomplished, and basically walk away, all while leaving Iran to burn in the long-term chaotic mess that's been created.
And I think that really gets to the heart of it all. Superior firepower and advanced technology gave them a swift, simple solution to a military problem, but it has done absolutely nothing to address the deep, tangled, and incredibly complex political reality of Iran. It hasn't even scratched the surface.
Which leaves us all with this one massive question. Was this a problem solved, or was this a new, much bigger crisis created? Did this strike just trade one problem we knew for a dozen new crises that are far more dangerous and unpredictable? That right there is the question the entire world is now holding its breath to see answered.